30 Minutes of Faith. We are very happy to have Reverend Lloyd Hanson with us, a man who has been around the block in Sacramento and with faith and interfaith issues. We will be honoring him in May at our Power of One Gala event. We recognize him as an influential and a wonderful part of Greater Sacramento. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Are you born and raised in Sacramento?
No, I'm a native of Kansas, central Kansas, midway between east and west and north and south. I attended grade school in an open country school. All 8 grades were in one room. High school, and then I went on. Those days I was farm related, 4-H, and so I got a degree from Kansas State University in the field of agriculture education. I was a ag teacher for 3 short months before serving my time in the Air Force during at the tail end of the Korean War conflict. But I had a ministry bug in me, which I had to expose, which I didn't want to expose, but I finally agreed to expose that and went to seminary and was ordained into the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America.
Were you raised in a religious home?
Not particularly. My parents saw that I went to Sunday school, and so Sunday school and worship services in the Lutheran tradition, long about the time you're a freshman in high school, you go for religious instruction. It's called confirmation, and I was serious about that. And but I wouldn't call my home particularly religious, but it was the influence of the local church that got to me.
Did you believe as a boy that there was a God?
No, I thought I was an atheist or agnostic. But, you know, and it was a very religious community. And so I followed along with everybody else and then got caught up in it.
Did you make the right decision?
Well, I stuck with it, so I must have.
You must have.
I know there's a lot of clergy that drop out along the way, but I've now celebrated over 50 years of ministry, so I would say I made the right decision.
Now, where have you ministered before you came
My
here?
first call was in Kansas. I started a mission congregation while serving an open country church. Funds were short in those days too, and so they made the most of it. An open country church was part of my ministry, and then I started the congregation in Junction City, Kansas, and then after 6 years I came out to Turlock, California, and was there for 9 years, and then I've been in Sacramento since 1975.
Well, you've become a pillar in this community, as certainly in the faith and the interfaith. Let's jump back to the Air Force for a minute, because I was in the Air Force, and we spoke with Sister Libby earlier today, and she's an Air Force girl.
Oh my.
What did you do in the Air Force?
Well, it was at the tail end of the Korean War conflict, and when I was received a commission in the Air Force through ROTC at Kansas State University, and when I entered the Air Force, one of the things they needed was radar controllers. A radar controller sat at a radar scope and would talk to pilots, and our concern was to make sure the skies over the United States and Alaska and really all over the world were friendly. And so no aircraft could fly without being intercepted and identified, and that was my role to vector guide pilots toward a suspicious aircraft. And while I was in Alaska, we never had one. I guess the Air Defense Command did a good job.
I spent time with a Minuteman missile squadron in the prairies of Minnesota and Montana and North Dakota, and you go in the hole for a week and keep an eye and see if you're ready to launch, and then you come out, and 40 years later we've never launched, and away we go. Did you ever give consideration to making the military a full-time job?
I guess that was an opportunity I had, and it was certainly provided for me, but no, I had no desire to make a career out of it.
Do you think serving in the military sort of lends itself to patriotism?
Well, it is. You're on the front line when you're in the military, and so it goes along with patriotism. It's integral. There's no way of really separating it out.
That's well stated. Where did you meet your wife?
Well, I've been married twice, and my first wife was through a Lutheran Student Association, and then after 34 years, cancer caught up with her, and she died. In 1995, I married my wife, Donna. As it turns out, we are distant relatives to each other. So I brought her to Sacramento, and now in retirement, she's been a very, very good helpmeet, and the churches I've served like her. She doesn't really see herself as a pastor's wife, but she fulfills the role very well.
Was burying your first wife the hardest thing you ever had to do?
I don't know if it was the hardest thing, but it was because of my faith and my Lord Jesus Christ, and part of that is believing in eternal life. I survived.
I have a cousin who has buried her parents, all of her siblings, her husband, and 2 of her 4 children. She's 94. And she doesn't believe in an afterlife.
No.
And she and I have talked at great length. And she just can't buy into it. But she's so hopeful that there will be an afterlife and that her parents and her husband and her children will be there. And for those who believe in that, it's a little easier cross to bear.
Yes.
Now, you have children?
Yes. My first wife and I were not blessed with children, and so we adopted 3. And then a miracle happened after 15 years. My wife conceived, and my 4th child was born.
That seems to be sort of a story you hear all the time. You adopt and then you conceive. And are those children anywhere nearby to Sacramento?
They're all 3 of them. 3 of them are here in Sacramento, and then the other one lives just north of Nashville, Tennessee.
Ah. And you've got grandchildren?
Got 5 grandchildren.
And you get to love on them and enjoy them. And
very much so.
It's a wonderful thing to love your children's children, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Now tell us where the Lutheran Church is these days. As far as, do they remain strong? They've been a strong presence in the United States for a very long time. Does that continue?
Yes, well, the Lutheran Church grows out of the Reformation in Europe, in Germany particularly. Martin Luther was a Roman Catholic priest, and he was a product of the Enlightenment that happened in Europe. The Enlightenment was a time when people began to think for themselves, artists, musicians, and so on. Even today, I find those people to be very creative and individualistic and a bit rebellious. Luther was of that mind. He asked questions, and for that reason of asking questions, he was finally asked to recant or leave. And so he was removed. That movement then spread throughout Northern Europe. Half of my heritage is Swedish. And so Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland all became Lutheran under not the separation of church and state, but state and church were together, and the state controlled the church. So then in the 1800s, through immigration, Lutherans came to this country. And so, like a lot of denominations, we are challenged, but I think we are strong with our challenges. And I think in faith, when you are challenged, you become stronger.
I couldn't agree more. Jumping back to the Scandinavian, were you blonde before you were silver?
I wasn't that blonde. My daughter, my naturally born daughter, is a blonde. But no, I can't claim that.
Well, I look in the mirror every now and again and think, gee, I used to have dark hair.
Yes.
What do you do for relaxation and when you just want to go do something to sort of recharge?
Well, I've been accused of having my vocation as my avocation. I have enjoyed being a pastor, but my involvements, I've been a jogger since 1960.
Wow.
And now I'm reading more than I ever have. Donna, my wife, keeps me well supplied with political books, and so I've been doing that. I guess ecumenism and inter-church relationships is, some pastors spend a lot of time on the golf course and so on. I spend time with my religious associates.
Do you have a favorite book in the Bible?
Oh, I would have to say the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John would be it, because it's the life of Jesus, it's the words of Jesus, so that would be my favorite.
The Gospels ring sweet as well as ringing true.
Well, yes.
That's a part of the Bible I have always liked. Where are we in society in goodness and decency? Are we still as good as we were 30 years ago? Are we doing better?
Well, I don't agree with those who think that things are getting worse and worse. They're bad. There's no question. But they've always been bad. Cain killed Abel because Abel had a more acceptable offering to God. So here you have two religious brothers who one killed the other out of jealousy. That's pretty bad. And I don't think it's much improved since that time. But I'm a hopeful person, and one of the things that I find very interesting is that for the first 1,000 years since Jesus, the church was one. There were no divisions. Then in 1054, there was a split between East and West, Rome and Constantinople. And then 500 years later, the Reformation, Martin Luther, my heritage, and we've arrived in Protestantism having over 300 different denominations, Christian denominations, all believing the Bible, all believing Jesus Christ, but just absolutely scattered. In 1960, Pope John the 23rd called that scene a scandal. And he started what I consider to be the real current ecumenical scene. And not only Christian ecumenism, but also inter-church. He ordered every bishop around the whole United States, not the whole world, to have an ecumenical officer who would be in charge locally in establishing improved relationships. To me, I think the wars that we've had over time are very often related to faith, and that is a scandal. So with the instigation of the Roman Catholic Church under particularly Pope John the 23rd, there's been a new development, and that's what the Interfaith Council of Greater Sacramento is about. And this is a product of that. The local diocese is heavily involved in this. And so now my denomination has come along, and the Episcopal Church and the Methodist Church and so on. We're all involved in this. And so I think we have an opportunity with our own Interfaith Council here, which you are very much a vital part of. I'm hopeful this will sow some seeds.
I am too.
So that there will be peace among us rather than war.
Can the fractures in the church ever be put back together will we see one church again?
I don't think that'll happen because we basically are selfish, greedy people. We're very competitive. We want to win. We don't like to lose. And that's part of our challenge with the Interfaith Council, is to have us be that we can be as you and me. You're not the same faith as me, but you're very respectful of me. I'm respectful of you. I think that's great.
I do too.
And I think this is the type of thing. Now, are we going to arrive at everybody? No. Just yesterday we had that killing in Oakland, where a student had been dismissed, and so he got his revenge. And
dismissed and disrespected.
Yeah.
Treated poorly.
And,
at least
and
as
so he got his revenge, and he killed all these, 7 people or whatever it was. But I don't think that's in the way of human nature, that we're going to arrive at the place that we will all learn that and live that way. I wish it was true, but I don't believe it'll happen.
Do you think the second coming of Christ is still a few hundred years away?
Well, that's ever since the Bible, ever since Jesus, believers believed it was coming. And it's a part of our historic faith documents that we believe that Jesus is coming. It hasn't happened. Do I believe that? I say the creed every worship service. So I believe that. When it will happen, I say I do not know. Jesus said he himself did not know.
That's correct.
So I go with Jesus. I don't go with these self-appointed people who supposedly out of study of Scripture decide when it's going to happen. I believe it will happen, but I think we should just be ready. Keep the faith. And that's why I have been involved and continue to be involved with your effort as our leader.
Well, I'm with you. I'm with you on all that stuff. Let's just keep going. How about, did you, while growing up, have a sense that good could triumph?
I don't think growing up I thought much about that. My nature was to be obedient. I respected my parents, and certainly the teacher. I knew that my parents supported the teacher, and I had better
You better be in line.
I had better be a respected student, and I've continued to be that way. I don't consider myself a scholar. Some of the things I may have said, some people may disagree with, and that's fine. But that's who I am, but I consider myself a student, and I'm still learning.
Yes, and we have a responsibility to be true to ourselves, the things we've learned and taken in and absorbed and felt. Sometimes, you feel something that nobody else might feel, and that's a very important thing. Do you travel much?
Well, we've been, Donna and I have been on a Mediterranean cruise. Took in Ephesus and Turkey.
How was that?
How was it?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a very, very privileged opportunity to do. So I took in Ephesus, and we took in Athens, and we took in Rome, and so on. And then we made a trip to Alaska, where I served for 15 months at a radar site. And
Did you get to see the old?
I got to see the old site.
Oh, cool.
And we rented a car and drove up there, and the car rental mean that we shouldn't travel on the rock road. Well, within about 10 miles of the radar site, the road turned rocky, and my wife is pretty particular about following rules.
Wow, you're married to the same kind of woman I am.
And I thought, sure. So I told her, I guess we'll have to turn around and go back because we're on rock roads. And she says, we're not going to go this far and not get up to the radar site. So we went to the radar site.
We went up the Eiffel Tower several years ago, and we got to the, top of the second level or whatever it is, where you've only got another 80 feet or something to go, and but you had to pay another €3 or something, to do it. My wife said the same thing. We didn't come all this way, and we're not going to the top. We're going to the top, and away we went. And I'm glad we did. It was, a pretty thing. Are the Lutheran ministers who are coming out of seminary these days, are they of the same quality of ministers that your generation brought?
Well, there's a continuing discussion about that. I'm on the party line, so I'm not one to criticize my denomination
Of course
or
not.
what the leaders are doing. I find that I attend clergy meetings today. There's a difference, but I wouldn't call them inferior.
And I didn't mean to imply that. It's interesting to watch the younger generation when you're the older generation, because you've already been where they are, and they haven't been yet where you are, and it's interesting
Well,
to
I
watch
think there is a recycling that goes on. I'm old enough now that I've seen things. People say, well, we've got new idea. Well, we had that idea 20 years ago or 25 years ago, but that goes along with human nature. So I'm not critical of theological education today. If anything, it's improved.
How long have you, let's see, when I see you, you're always wearing the man of the cloth. Is that easy and just part of your life, and that's what you do?
Well, my philosophy is I'm not ashamed of the cloth. I'm not ashamed of my identity. And early on, one of my associates said that by wearing the collar, then I'm identified. And particularly if an emergency arrives and I go to whatever hospital is, there's no questions asked. Who are you? Let's see your identification and all that. The collar identifies me, and so I decide, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be dressed. I'm going to be dressed as to who I am.
My grandfather used to say, look the best you can, that's bad enough. I've thought about that a lot in my life. Have you been loved and respected in Sacramento?
Oh, yes, very much so. That doesn't mean that clergy don't have struggles within the parish. And since I retired, I've served 2 different parishes, and nary a problem. I couldn't say that when I was active. I don't know what it is, but human beings have ideas, and ideas don't always blend. And maybe I wasn't the most successful at trying to blend these ideas, but sometimes it just comes down to knock down, drag out.
Well, and the old American adage of mistakes bring experience, help us as we age and grow along. Where do you see Sacramento 15 or 20 years from now? Or will we do better? We're viewed as a religious city, very diversified city. Will we be better?
Well, I hope so. I'm a hopeful person, and so I would say go for it.
Okay. If you could wave a magic wand in the world to either fix or repair or do away with something, what would you do?
Well, as I indicated earlier, religion is part of the reason we have wars. And if I could do anything, have the Interfaith Service Bureau, the Interfaith Council, ideas spread throughout the world where we continue to understand each other and work together.
Well, thank you very, very much. It's nice to visit with you. The time flies by, and we'll look forward to you at the Power of One, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Okay, take care.
You're welcome.